receiving from you. But go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading the chat to see if somebody is replying, but nobody is responding. But okay. Okay, so I'm just going to start. Well, let me go ahead and start on my webpage, which is the screen. I hope everyone can see it right now. I hope so. But this is my website, which I put together. It took me several months. So this is not just something that I put together in a hurry in a couple weeks. This is something that I've been continuously working on responding for almost, but the website is almost 2 years old. Quiz is about 1 year old. It was just basically what I do. My idea, first of all, was that I wanted to debate Darth. So in March 2019, I sent him 2 invitations. The first one I sent to him, by email. I didn't have his channel. I didn't know if he had a channel or not. I just had his email. So I sent him an email invitation, never received any reply. About 2 weeks later, I sent a second invitation, never received a reply. But I have copies of both of those emails on my website. He has copies of those 2 because I sent him copies on a couple occasions. Actually, the last time was, I think, in October of last year. And I know that somebody on his end opened that email. And the way I know that is because I have software on my end. It shows if somebody actually opens the email. So when I look at that, he opened that about 4 or 5 times, same email. I know that it was his email address. So I never received a reply from him. Now, what happened, I'm just going to give about maybe this is just about 5 minutes just to go over our history up till the beginning to what it is now. So I never received a reply from him. So in March of last year, I was on a YouTube live stream, which was Jungle Jargon. I was in the chat area, not the audio area, but I was in the chat area, and Darth was in the audio area with Jungle Jargon. And I started typing messages into the chat area. When Darth saw that I started typing messages into the chat area, the first words out of his mouth, this is the first time we ever spoke verbally to each other, even though I know he says that we spoke earlier, which is a lie. But the first words out of his mouth were, well, I see we've got this little lying little weasel, Darth Dawkins, debunked. How are you going to debunk my position? So he called me a liar right away. So I asked him, well, how did I lie? Where is this lie that you're speaking about? And here we are now in 2021, and I've never had an actual response except for one of the things that he said, not to me, but he said it to other people in his Discord server. He said that the reason why I was a liar is because I did not confront him in the YouTube channel, which was Smokey Saint's YouTube channel. Now, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to explain why. Because remember, I had confronted him in Jungle Jargon in March, but I did not even go to Smokey Saint's YouTube stream until May. That was 2 months later. So how could he accuse me of being a liar for something that would not happen until 2 months later? So it didn't make any sense. So that's what I've been trying to find out. What was the lie prior to March? That's what I've been asking him. What was the lie prior to March at the time that I was in the YouTube live or the YouTube text area in Jungle Jargon. He's never been able to answer that question. He accuses me of being a liar. He's never been able to tell me what is the lie from that point going before. So that's where it stands right now. I told him, I made it clear to him that I will not chat with him until he first tells me, where's my lie? What is my lie? Now, I'm almost finished. What happened after that is that in May, that was when I was in Smokey Saint's live stream. That's where Darth came into the live stream. He confronted me in the live stream. He wanted to have a chat with me, or he wanted to debate me. He already knew full well that I was not going to debate him because I had already let him know. Until he first tells me how I lied, I'm not going to debate him. So he already knew that. Secondly, 2 days before the Smokey Saint live stream, 2 days before that, I had already sent a letter, or excuse me, a message to Smokey Saint on his YouTube channel. And I explained to him in the message that I sent to Smokey Saint, because we were at this time, we were planning to do a stream where I was going to be in Smokey Saint's channel, and we were going to talk about Darth's worldview. So 2 days before that took place, I sent a message to Smokey Saint. I'm going to read it very quickly. And this message, by the way, this message, it's on Smokey Saint's channel. If you go back 2 days before the live, you'll see that this was posted. This message was posted on May 10. Okay, the live stream was on May 12. So this is 2 days before that. I'm going to read it. It said, I do have a YouTube channel, website, and it presents my take on Darth's worldview. And I would be more than happy to come into your channel with one condition. I will not be open being in the same chat room as Darth. And I have a reason for that, which I don't want to post here, but I would be more than happy to share it with you in an email or in a private chat. But for now, I can only say that I have unfinished business with Darth, which relates to an incident that took place about 6 or 7 weeks ago. And that's the incident in YouTube. Okay, that's what I was talking about in Jungle Jargon. Okay, 6 or 7 weeks ago, where Darth accused me of being a fraud and a liar. And Darth is aware of this unfinished business. I have never chatted verbally with Darth because I have already brought this point to Darth's attention in a PDF that I sent to him in Discord. So I would be open to a chat with Darth in the future, but only after the other issues are settled, not in his Discord chat room, but in a healthy and mutually respectful environment that is open to the free exchange of thoughts and ideas, even if those ideas differ from mine. Other than this, I will look forward to chat with you and others on your channel. Thank you for your invitation. And then I wrote a second message, it's right under that. If Darth were to come in and join the chat tomorrow, I would not have any problem with that. If he is in the room the same time as me, I am not going to be inhibited in any way. I will explain my thoughts and views in an open and respectful way. I would just prefer to remain quiet. And if he wants to chat with me, I have no problem with that either, as long as he first addresses the situation I described. Do you know yet what time your stream will be tomorrow? Okay, so that was it. So Smokey Saint knew at this point in time, he knew that I was not planning to speak with Darth. And yet, if you go back to the live stream and you look at it, you get a little different picture, because if you look at it, you'll see he actually he was trying to steer the conversation in that direction of me having a chat with Darth, even though I made it clear to him that I was not intending to do that. So that's what happened on Smokey Saint's channel that night. That is the reason why I already let Smokey Saint know it was not my objective or my intention to have a chat with Darth until Darth first addresses or answers the question about why I'm a liar. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, I'm going to go to my webpage. I'll open up my webpage, and we're going to take a look at Darth's quote unquote impossible to deny worldview. Now, I do things a little differently in my worldview, because in my worldview, what I do is I actually embrace and accept everything that Darth says. I don't push back. See, that's what you will see when you take a look at different people that he debates, especially atheists or unbelievers. What you will see is they push back. Whenever Darth says something, they try to resist. That's the natural reaction, is to try to resist what he says. But my concept, I thought about that for a while, and I said, wait a minute, what will happen if I actually accept everything he says? Because if I accept everything he says, in the end, I should end up with something that is coherent. I should end up with something that makes sense. So now we're going to take a look at the first question. It says, how could someone falsify Darth's worldview? The following clip answers this question according to Darth's own stipulation. So what I've got on my webpage, I've got the clip, which I'm going to play that so that we can hear Darth as he explains how to falsify. I'm going to play that right now. Again.
Correct.
In order to falsify A, you have to say
Okay, playing.
A.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay? You can only falsify a proposed state of affairs by pointing to a state of affairs that contradicts it.
Okay, Sydney, did you say you heard that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm going to continue. So what he said, he just said that in order to falsify a state of affairs, you have to point to a state of affairs that contradicts that. So in other words, falsifying something would mean that somebody would be able to point to a contradiction in his worldview. That would be one way, at least one way, to falsify his worldview. Okay, now I'm going to continue. I'm going to scroll down. And then section 1, it said, this section will provide an overview of Darth's fundamentalist Christian position. The following clips are examples of his own statements. Now, I'm not going to play all of them, but I'm just going to give an overview of what it basically said. The first one, it said that according to Darth, the Christian worldview is the only coherent worldview. And Darth speaks, when he says that, he's not only speaking about Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, or other groups that are considered cults, according to Orthodox Christianity or the Bible. He's also speaking about denominations or some denominations that actually are considered as being Orthodox Christianity. And then also he talks about the worldviews which are incoherent. Of course, they would be agnosticism, atheism, or any position of unbelief in the fundamentalist Christian biblical God. That's how he would define incoherent, or something that doesn't go along with his worldview, basically. Now, not only does Darth say that the Christian worldview is the only true and coherent worldview, but he also, for example, he says that outside of the Christian worldview, one couldn't even defend the statement, the sky is blue. I'm going to play that.
As asserting that your, what did you say? Just to get it clear.
Well, I'm saying outside of the Christian worldview, you couldn't even defend the statement, the sky is blue.
I can. I absolutely.
Okay, so now we're going to scroll down a little more. It says that there can only be one true worldview, and that truth can only be attainable in a worldview that play that.
The flavor of their argument is that there's an infinite possible worldview. No, there can only be one true worldview. The point is, in terms of the framework of naturalism, are metaphysically unviable and unintelligible. So you can't say that truth is attainable in naturalism because it's a false worldview. Truth is only attainable in a worldview that is true, not in a worldview that is false.
All right. He also says that a model of reality or a worldview is all-encompassing. He also says that a worldview is either entirely true or it's not entirely true. I'm going to play that one.
Okay.
The thing is, that goes against
the worldview. A worldview, in terms of its ultimacy, is either true in its entirety or it is not entirely true.
The thing is,
the law of a listen. You know what? Why don't you just listen and learn? Okay.
No, the thing is,
watch anybody. He doesn't like people
like
talking.
the thing is,
okay,
dude, like what Joe's talking, you have been talking for a while, okay?
You know what?
You have been talking for a while, okay?
Listen,
I have the right to contra argument what you're saying.
You're an idiot. Goodbye.
So that was a real bee's nest. Okay, now let me continue. So now Darth, he talks about the word incoherent. He doesn't use that lately. I noticed he hasn't been using that as much as I heard him use it in the past. But I think now he talks about having an open system and a closed system, which is basically, could someone please mute your mic, please, because I'm hearing some coughing. Okay, now, so incoherency, how does he define that? Incoherency, as I'm using it, it can refer to either it doesn't make any sense at all, or there's no root basis for this, or there's a contradiction. Okay, that's how he defines something that is incoherent. Now, I'm going to play this one. This one is a little clip. He talks about what would it be, what would be the proposition that is the negation, excuse me, that is the negation of his proposition, and how is it true? What is it? So I'm going to play that.
In order to make a determination that X is wrong, you have to believe and assert that not X is true. How are you going to determine that any proposition is false? The only way that you can determine that a proposition is false is that the negation of the proposition is true. So if my position is wrong, then the negation of my position must be true. So what is that proposition that is a negation of my proposition, and how is it true? What is it?
Okay. Okay. So the answer to that would be the negation of his position would be that his position is not the only coherent and or true position. That would be the negation of his position. Okay, now I'm going to read the overview. That was section 1. I'm just going to read the overview. Darth says that his position is the only true and coherent position. Incoherency, as he is used and refer to a contradiction. He also says that if my, quote, if my position is wrong, then the negation of my position must be true, quote, unquote. Okay, he says that one can, quote, falsify a proposed state of affairs by pointing to a state of affairs that contradicts. Okay, now I'm going to keep scrolling down. This is section 2. Okay, so the question is now, are there contradictions in his worldview? So now we're going to take a look at a few of Darth's claims, and then we're going to examine some of his statements. And I think that once we're going to be able to reveal that the answer to that question is an emphatic yes. However, before we do that, we first want to take a look at what Darth might hypothetically say to an unbeliever who presents him with a contradiction. What does he usually say? So there's a couple clips. I'm going to play the first one right now. This is what he usually says.
An omnipotent, infallible God gave fallible men perfect information, then there should be zero contradictions in the Bible, and there's thousands of them. So therefore, that God that you believe in must not exist or must not be infallible.
Well, sir, first of all, you'd have to establish that contradictions are a problem in your worldview.
He says first, somebody would have to even just establish that a contradiction is a problem from within their own worldview. Now, he also went on record as saying that he does not believe that an atheist can demonstrate from within their worldview that contradictions are always invalid. Play that.
I do not agree with anything in your worldview, okay?
Okay, now just hang on. This is still playing.
Okay.
Now,
You don't believe contradictions being
I do not believe that you can demonstrate from within your worldview that contradictions are always invalid. Now, my question to you.
Okay. Now another clip. Darth says that he can agree with an atheist because of a difference in worldviews. I'm gonna play that one.
Because we've gone over this.
The laws of logic.
Okay,
So we agree that something cannot
that doesn't
come from
answer the
nothing.
question.
Can we agree that something cannot come from nothing?
I can't agree with you because your worldview doesn't have a foundation.
Neither does yours.
You want to argue for it. You want an
That's
argument.
not what I asked, is it? Can we agree that some?
I cannot agree because we have two different worldviews. So
I don't have a worldview.
Okay, that was the second one. Now I'm going to show another clip. So in this clip, we have an example of where an unbeliever agrees with Darth from within his own worldview. And so what do you think Darth says? Does Darth tell the atheist that he can't agree with him from within his own worldview? No. Instead, he tells the guy that agreeing with him is good. So I'm going to play that.
If you do not claim that there's continuity, then you have no basis for intelligibility because your very capacity to speak is going to require the precondition of continuity.
I agree.
Good. So is there continuity?
Yes. I mean, for the sake of argument, yes. Obviously, for the sake
Okay.
of experimentation, yes.
Okay.
For the sake of language,
good,
yes.
Good. So
Everything was fine and dandy there. Everything seemed to be fine. He agreed. The atheist said that Darth agreed with the atheist from within the atheist's own worldview. Now, Darth also says that he does not believe that an atheist can demonstrate from within their worldview that contradictions are always invalid, but he has agreed with unbelievers or atheists in his chats with them about identifying a contradiction from within their own worldview. I'm going to play an example of that.
How do you falsify something?
One way might be that you could see that that thing doesn't correspond with reality. In other words, it's not truthful. Or something was not truthful.
Okay, so what you're saying, so what you are saying, and I agree with you, is you're making an appeal to the law of non-contradiction and excluded middle, right?
With the atheist, even though he previously said to the other two atheists who supposedly have the same worldview because they're both atheists. So why is it in one case he can agree and in the other case he can't? So, okay, now I'm going to keep on going. Here's another little clip where he's agreed with another atheist. Here, I'm going to play that.
I agree with you that the evidence is required.
Hang on, it's still playing. I don't think the audio is so good on this clip. Okay, so I think on this clip, there was some kind of a problem with the audio. I'll have to reload it, but basically it's showing a couple other I think 3 clips. It's showing where he's speaking with the atheist and he's agreeing with them on what they are saying. So that's what that clip is. I'm sorry, I'll have to redo that one. Okay, so I'm going to proceed though. So in the above videos, Darth replies to the unbelievers by stating that he would first have to establish that a contradiction would be a problem in their worldview, but Darth has agreed with them at moments when they do identify a contradiction. He also points out that the Christian worldview is impossible, quote unquote, impossible to deny. So I'm going to play that where he said that.
It is impossible to deny the Christian worldview. And
all right. Now I've got a couple responses to that. One, which is really not a direct response, but I like to use this. It's one of my favorite quotes. It says, if you always tell the truth, if you always tell the truth, you don't need a good memory. That was by Mark Twain. That's just one of my favorite. I'm not saying it has anything related to do with what he's saying, but I just like to quote that. Now, the other part, secondly, guess what else Darth has gone on record as saying is impossible? Okay, in the next 2 videos, Darth states that it is impossible to take a position of neutrality towards his fundamentalist Christian God. Play that.
I think you're misunderstanding your position, right? You're not in a position of neutrality. Nobody is. That is impossible.
So it's impossible for someone to be in a position of neutrality. I play the second one.
Then by refusal of that assertion, you are denying God's existence either directly or indirectly, explicitly or implicitly. So you are denying the existence of God. All right? So you're not neutral. You may think of yourself as neutral. You may claim that you're neutral, but neutrality is an impossible position to have when it comes to what is ultimate and transcendentally necessary for all facts. And in this case, we would be designating that as God.
Right. So now I'm going to continue. Now remember, keep in mind, right now, I'm accepting everything Darth says. I'm embracing what he says. I'm not trying to push back. Okay, now I'm going to continue. So now Darth has gone on record as saying on more than one occasion that one can be neutral towards his God. As you continue to scroll down the webpage, you will be able to hear him as he makes that claim. In fact, he privately admitted in his Discord server that he held the wrong, and he said that he changed his position about neutrality, and then after he changed his position, still went on record as saying one could choose a third option, neutrality. So now I'm going to play the video where he privately admitted that he changed his position.
Now, I didn't even realize until a few years ago that the idea of neutrality toward God was not neutrality, because of my being brought up in Western civilization. I thought it was perfectly intellectually, philosophically, and theologically appropriate to, you can affirm God, you can deny God, and you can be neutral toward God. Now, as a generalization, that's fine, but in actuality, neutrality toward God does not exist. It's an indirect, implicit denial of God, hiding behind openness that you might accept God. So when we take a biblical view on these things, it exposes the fraudulent thinking of the unbelieving world, and we Christians have been too influenced. We keep on acquiescing to their demands. Okay, why should we as Christians, who acknowledge God's existence, we acknowledge God has revealed Himself, that God is ground of all being, why should we humor unbelievers that there are parameters of existence that provide for all sorts of facts that exist without God? Why would we tolerate that? Look, we're not neutral, and neither are they. Daniel, let me explain it to you this way. If we try to reason toward God, and we don't start metaphysically that God is a necessary precondition, and we know this because He's revealed Himself, and you have premise 1, premise 2, and then the conclusion, therefore God, that's incoherent. Because how can you establish either premise in an argument by which you conclude in God? What would be more absolute than God Himself in the either premise? How could you establish any premise without God's existence? Now that's a serious question.
Okay.
So this is what unbelievers want us to do.
Okay. Now, that's where he admitted that he switched. He basically changed his position about neutrality. Now we're going to take a closer look at his worldview, so-called impossible to deny worldview. And I'm going to ask you, after looking at this worldview, I want you to stop, at the end. I want you to stop and think about this impossible to deny worldview while reminding you about what Darth said earlier, concerning his worldview. He said one can falsify a proposed state of affairs by pointing to a state of affairs that contradicts it. So listen carefully as we go along here. So I'm going to play the first clip. He's explaining, he said there's only one way that you can falsify something. That's through the law of non-contradiction. I'm going to play that.
By showing there's many different ways. But one of them would be
There's only one way you can falsify something. That's through the law of non-contradiction.
Darth stated just now that there was only one way to falsify something. If you keep going, I'm going to keep going now. Darth contradicts himself on even this point, because he goes on to continue explaining different ways that you can falsify something. Play that.
Stop and reconsider your assumptions.
You're giving me more mumbo jumbo. How do you falsify something without the law of identity? I'll keep on repeating my question until I get an adult answer. How do you falsify something without the law of identity and non-contradiction?
Okay, there's another clip right here.
How do you falsify something?
You would one way might be that you could see that that thing doesn't correspond with reality. In other words, it's not truthful. Or something was not truthful.
Okay, so what you're saying? Okay, so what you are saying, and I agree with you, is you're making an appeal to the law of non-contradiction and exclude the middle, right?
So that was a little different.
In a way, you can.
Okay, now here's another one.
The problem is you're not narrowing your focus. Your focus is too wide, and you're scurrying down semi-related rabbit trails. Now, in order to, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. How do you falsify something?
How do you make a falsifiable claim?
No.
How do you falsify a claim?
How do you falsify a proposition?
You show that there's evidence that it's not true. Yeah, you show that there's so if I
Sorry, let me hit that again. I'm sorry.
How do you falsify a proposition?
you show that there's evidence that it's not true. Yeah, you show that there's so if I say that, for example, all birds have wings, right? I can falsify that by showing that there are birds without wings.
That's incorrect, sir. The way
that's wrong.
That what you just said is wrong. Okay, the way that you falsify a proposition is to verify the negation of the proposition. Do you understand?
Okay, that was a little different. Now, what's interesting about that clip is that even though he told that person, he said that's incorrect, Darth actually uses that same argument in his chats with atheists. He uses a variation of the same example. I'm going to play that.
Do you know what the fundamental problem of science is? The fundamental problem in science is called the problem of induction. It's observing a small subset of the whole. When you appeal to observation of water freezing at a certain temperature, you haven't observed all water at that temperature. You're only appealing that you have only seen consistencies produce that. But observing those consistencies doesn't necessitate that the whole was like that. If I observe 5,000 swans and they're white, does that mean all swans are white? No, it doesn't. So the point is, you can't, one more thing, you cannot appeal to observation and sense perception to justify that nature operates according to some laws, because they presuppose that there are laws for their meaningfulness.
Now, falsifying the Christian God. Now, this one's really interesting. It's talking about falsifying his own God. Darth has actually contradicted himself on this very issue. The first clip, it said, Darth says that God is unfalsifiable. Excuse me, the little music, but it'll pass.
Okay. Now, is God or the God of the Bible unworthy of belief because it is unfalsifiable?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay, so God of the Bible, God is unworthy of belief because God is unfalsifiable in principle. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Everybody hear that? Okay, here comes the coup de grace.
The coup de grace.
If God is unworthy of belief because he is unfalsifiable, then nothing can count as evidence for God, right?
No, what? No.
If God is unworthy of belief because he's unfalsifiable, then nothing can count as evidence for God. So is causality in your worldview the ground of all being, or is something else?
Again, I don't think the term the ground of all being is coherent.
Okay, no, sir, I just explained to you why it's coherent. Okay? Saying that it's not coherent after it has been explained to you in a coherent fashion is not a rebuttal. Now,
I don't understand what you mean by the ground of all being.
Okay, so God is unfalsifiable.
Okay, so he clearly said God is unfalsifiable, right? And then in this clip, he also basically says the same.
Is God a falsifiable proposition? I mean, that God exists?
So the guy asked him, is God falsifiable? And Darth said no. Right now, in this one, you're going to hear a little difference. Let me play that.
There are ways of falsifying the Christian God. I agree, actually. I think there are ways of falsifying. Does he need a name where I argue? There are ways of falsifying
Okay. So now that was a little different from the first two clips. Now this is very interesting.
You need an a priori argument. There are ways of falsifying the Christian God. I agree, actually. I think there are ways of falsifying the Christian God. Let's take Ozymandias. Ozymandias says, well, God's not falsifiable. Right? You can actually hear him say that on YouTube. Well, God.
So remember in the first clip, or the earlier clip, Ozzy said that God, that there were ways, he agreed with Darth when Darth told him that there are ways to falsify the Christian God. And then in this clip that I just played, Darth is talking about Ozzy, and he said that Ozzy said on YouTube that there's not ways to falsify God. So it's a little different. Okay, now here's more about the impossibility of being neutral. What about being neutral as a third option? Can we take a neutral position? Darth has gone on record as saying that one can and can't and can. A triple flip-flop. I'm going to play, this is one of the earliest videos. I'll play that first.
There are three basic positions on the existence of God. One can affirm the existence of God, one can deny, and one can remain neutral, such as an agnostic, where you don't know whether or not God does or does not exist. So if it's your position that you neither affirm or deny the existence of God, then the best word that you should use in order not to be confusion in common parlance is to call yourself an agnostic.
Okay, he said you could be neutral. Now let me play this. You're going to hear a little difference.
Experienced. So I stated either you will have a belief in God or you will not have a belief in God. There's not a third option. Sure there is.
Not a third option. Okay. There's another one.
So somebody could be neutral about the existence of Zeus. Okay? But you can't be neutral about that which is ultimate. Can you be neutral about the ground of all being? No, you can't.
Okay, now the next clip is only from about 2 weeks. This is only from about 2 weeks ago or a few days, and he had his chat with Randolph Richards. Let's see what he says here.
Okay, if you're not neutral, there's three positions that you can take towards subject matters in the
Okay,
channel.
and then I'll elaborate on what I mean by that. But
Either you affirm God's existence, you deny God's existence, or you take a position of neutrality where you neither affirm nor deny God's existence. Which one of those three positions represent your view?
Okay, now so we're going to continue to look at Darth's impossible to deny. Darth says that he can't be wrong about everything he claims to know. Let's hear that.
A couple questions, if that's all right, everyone. Darth, could you be wrong about everything you claim to know?
No.
Okay. So he can't.
It's one deception.
So he said he can't be wrong about everything he claims to know. Now, let's take a look at this one. What does he say here?
It's one deception. The possibility of a God. No, that's not a possibility in my worldview. Okay, good. Is it possible for you to believe something else than in God? Is it possible for me to believe in something else than God? Yeah, God in his creation has endowed me with agency to make choices where I psychologically deceive myself. Yeah, that's a possibility.
Well, there he said that his God has endowed him to make decisions, or, there's a possibility that he can deceive himself. So that's a little different from what you heard first. What's also interesting about that is that, Darth, he said, when Godless Girl asked him, could he be wrong about everything he claims to know? Remember the earlier clip that we listened to where Darth admitted he was wrong about his position on neutrality. Yet he says he can't be wrong about everything he claims to know. So this is, to me, it's amazing to listen to this. Darth admitted, now he did not use the word wrong. When you heard that previous video where he was talking about switching his position on neutrality, he didn't actually use the word wrong. But according to Darth's own position, you can find it on plenty of other videos. I even have them. He said one cannot be neutral and not be neutral at the same time and in the same sense, because it would violate the law of excluded middle. So he cannot say that he can and cannot be neutral in the same time and in the same sense. Now, let me keep going. Okay, here's another one. How do we know that God exists? How to know that God exists? Darth says that there's only one way to know that God exists. Let's listen to that.
To me, spicy. I use different arguments.
Listen, don't overtalk me. Now, how do you as a Christian know that God exists?
So I have a few reasons, mostly philosophical arguments that get me to perfect being theism.
Wrong. There's only one reason how you know God exists. There's only one reason. It can't be other reasons.
Okay, what is that?
No, you tell me. I want to see if you know what the answer is.
I clearly don't, because I have a different answer.
What is the only way? What is the only way that you could know that God is?
What do you mean by no? Do you mean like certainty?
Okay, listen to me. Don't jerk me around. I'm in no mood for
He's
that.
not.
Okay, so he said there's only one way. Now we're going to keep going a little on that. Here's one way. Okay, I'm going to play that.
The Bible makes it clear that the Christian God has made us in such a way that we can know some things.
Know what things?
For example, that he exists. For example, turn to Romans 1.
Well,
Romans
I know that's what the Bible says, but I'm.
Okay, so in that case, Darth is talking about what he calls special revelation, which is actually just another. That's what the Bible says. Special revelation. All right, that's I guess the one way that he was talking about. Well, let's keep going. And even though Darth told someone, he actually told the first Christian that there's only one way to know God exists. Here's another way. Let me play that.
Well, there's no evidence for God. Well, how did they determine that? You want to know how you can know God exists?
How can I know God exists?
You have a left hand?
Indeed.
Look at your left palm.
All right.
Okay. Do you have knowledge of your palm?
Indeed.
Okay, so you have a rational acquisition of your palm.
Right.
Therefore, God exists.
All right. So that was to know the only one way. That was the second way. Let's keep on going. Let's see if there's another. Okay, here's a third only one way.
How do you know that the Christian God exists? Because the Christian God has revealed himself.
And how has the Christian God revealed himself?
He has revealed himself in three forms: natural revelation, innate revelation, and special revelation.
All right. So that was the third only one way. All right. So now Darth says that to give any other answer other than the one that you just heard, it will fail. He said that if that's okay. If that statement is true, let's say that we're going to accept Darth on what he just said, that any other answer will fail. That would mean that the previous two ways will fail, according to Darth's own stipulation. To play that.
Okay, so as I was saying, the only way that we could know that God exists is that if God constructs this world and its parameters to reveal that he exists. Okay, any other answer than that will fail. Okay.
Right. So, so remember, I'm sorry. Initially said there's only one way. Then he gave three ways, and then he turned around and said, if there's more than one way, whatever that answer is, it will fail. So that's very interesting. Let's see. Now, Darth said he knows God exists, but he has also went on record. He presumes that God exists. I think you've heard this video before, but I'm going to play it again. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, you haven't.
God is a God and is a God of African people. I see you, George.
Okay, I didn't assert to you that the Christian God exists. I simply told you that I do presume that. Now, my opening question to you was...
Oh, he said he presumed that his God exists. Here's another clip where he says basically the same thing.
Relates to the topic. I said, here's what I said. Obviously, you weren't really listening very carefully. I said that I presume the Christian God exists as he is defined and described in the...
Sorry, there's a dog in the background. It's a neighbor's dog. Okay, now, so you heard Darth say he presumes that God exists. And so now keep in mind, according to Darth himself, we're going to hear it a little later. He said assumptions are like a world of make-believe. Now, right now, we're going to temporarily go outside of Darth's worldview in order to define a word that he just used on those two separate occasions, which is very important to define these words. And that word is the word presume. So basically what I did here, I used the same sources that Darth has used against atheists whenever he defines the word atheist. So I went to his sources, and I'm using the same sources right now to define what that word presume means. I'm going to read it. There's about 8 or 9 of them. I'm going to read it, a couple of them, or maybe 3 or 4, just to give you the idea. Collins Dictionary. If you presume that something is the case, you think that it is the case, although you are not certain. Freedictionary.com. Belief on reasonable grounds. Merriam-Webster. To undertake without leave or clear justification. Macmillan Dictionary. To think that something is true because it is likely, although you cannot be certain. Cambridge Dictionary. To believe something to be true because it is very likely, although you are not certain. Oxford Advanced Learner's Dictionary. To suppose that something is true, although you do not have actual proof. Dictionary. To take for granted, assume, or suppose. Encyclopedia Britannica. Fallacy in logic. The material fallacies are also known as fallacies of presumption because the premises presume too much. They either covertly assume a conclusion or avoid the issue. So there's basically the idea there. If you look at those definitions, it's talking about to presume is defined as to not be certain or to assume something. But remember, what did Darth say about assumptions? Let me play a video so we can hear what he thinks about assumptions.
Do your knowledge statements have an ultimate path of justification?
I think he said he's done.
Yeah, because he's stuck on stupid. He wants to affirm on one hand
that everything that he says is based upon assumptions. But then he wants to keep shooting his mouth off and make knowledge claims as though they were not glorified assumptions. Once he concedes that everything ultimately stems in his worldview from assumptions, then everything he says to me are assumptions. They're not actually knowledge.
Okay, you heard him say it himself. Assumptions are not actually knowledge. He also said that if everything is based on an assumption, and remember, in Darth's worldview, ultimately, God is everything. He said it's game over. You hear them say that a lot. I'm going to play that.
Other way for everything, listen, it's really simple. It's not complicated. Okay? Is everything you say to me an assumption?
It's based on assumptions, yes.
No, that's right. Is everything you say a glorified assumption?
Everything I say is based on assumptions. I can't say.
Okay, thank you. Wait a minute. Game over. You just hung yourself.
Okay. Well, I think that everybody.
Game over. Do you? Okay. Look. Can you imagine if you were a witness in a case, and that's how you testified? Do you think the jury would believe you about anything?
Don't really care. So
no. What I'm just showing you.
Okay. So now let's keep going. Internal critiques. Can it be done from within one's own worldview? Darth says yes, and let's hear the yes.
How can you ask these questions without relying on my worldview? No, I could temporarily assume that logic is dependent on Zeus to do an internal evaluation. For example, I can do an internal evaluation. I can do an internal evaluation of any worldview and temporarily assume it to do an internal critique. You can do that. Hold on a second. You can do that. You can do an internal critique of any worldview while temporarily assuming that it is a case, and then moving from there to see that if it's internally consistent. Now, I'm asking. I'll ask.
Okay, that's the yes card. Now let's hear the no card.
You're speaking from. You can't appeal to any other worldview because.
Well, you could do an internal critique.
No, an internal critique can only be launched from a coherent worldview. If I do an internal critique of Islam, I'm going to have to do so from a base, from the Christian worldview.
Well, no, I think the point of an internal critique is to step into the other's shoes and see if everything makes sense and follows.
Right. But the point is, when you do an internal critique, you're doing so to expose the incoherence of that worldview. But to do a critique means that there's a coherent worldview to critique from.
Well, you don't really have to critique from a coherent worldview to point out an incoherency in a different worldview.
No,
right?
wrong. Okay, if you're going to do a reasoned evaluation, that reasoned evaluation has to come from a model of reality. What would that be?
And something else I wanted to say and point out is
I asked you a question. I said, if you're going to do a reasoned analysis,
I wanted to say something else.
Well, I'd like to finish my question.
You can ask
if you're going to do an internal critique, which is a reasoned analysis, one's worldview is going to have to provide for that.
Provide for what?
To do an internal critique. For example, can I do an internal critique of Islam without there being a worldview that can provide for the metaphysical intelligibility of reason?
I don't think that grounding the metaphysics of reason is something that needs to be established.
You're not getting this. Okay. An internal critique. Okay, is an internal critique of Islam, is that a reasoned process?
Yeah.
Okay. Does a reasoned process have to be done within a model of reality that provides for the metaphysical intelligibility?
I think I would say no.
about anything then.
Well, I don't think that you have to have.
And what I kind of think is kind of a little comical about that, in the first example, he was talking about the Zeus worldview. Zeus, which is I guess in Greek mythology, I think it is. And he was going along saying that you could start from that worldview to actually arrive at a reasonable conclusion, or start from there to lead up to a reasonable conclusion. But then in the second example, which was Islam, the guy was trying to say that he could start from Islam, and Darth was saying, no, you can't do that. So he was giving more credibility to the Zeus worldview than he was the Islam worldview. I just thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, okay, the next one, cognitive reasoning. Is it God ordained or an assumption? Darth has said it's both. Let's hear where he says cognitive reasoning is assumed from within his.
Grow up, act like an adult in these rooms, but you see, I'm assuming that from within my worldview, that the God of the Bible has endowed you with certain basic cognitive reasoning faculties. But you see, you don't. Okay, I'd like to speak without being interrupted. I really would appreciate it.
Now you heard it's going to be a real bee's nest. We're going to get to that a little later, but that throws a monkey wrench in Darth's entire worldview. I'm going to show you why. If you haven't already know, you're going to see why. Now, the next clip, Darth said that we do assume basic cognition because we don't have any other option. I'm going to play that.
Let's ask a simple question. We arrive at the laws of logic by employing the laws of logic. Did we know the laws of logic? Do we have to know the laws of logic in order to know the laws of logic?
We assume that our reasoning is reliable, but that's not the same. Okay, man, I'm trying to answer you. Okay. We assume that our cognitive processes are reliable because there is no other option.
No other. Now let me keep going. He said, now this one said, Darth, he says that cognitive reasoning is God ordained. It's not an assumption. Let's hear that.
Now, when you stated that my position, or someone like myself, like Cy, is just assuming it, we're assuming it. If your statement is true, then it necessarily follows the falsity of the Christian God. Are you aware of that? But the issue is simply this. You are stipulating from your model of reality that our most foundational beliefs are assumptions, which means that they are not providentially ordained by God. Now, if it is the case that my most foundational commitment, that the Christian God has revealed himself in natural and special revelation, and if that ultimate commitment and foundational belief that I have is in fact arbitrary, as you say, that necessarily follows that the Christian God does not exist. Okay, listen, you're wrong. Okay, let me explain to you why. Okay, when Adam opened up his eyes in the biblical narrative, okay, he was made in the image of God. Okay, there were certain baseline cognitive functioning that was providentially endowed, that God endowed Adam and Eve with, and were passed on through biological reproduction. Okay, now if these basic mental states are a providential endowment, then by definition, they're not assumptions. Now, listen carefully. Now, if they are indeed assumptions, then it follows necessarily that those basic mental states are not providential endowments by the God of the Bible, which means the God of the Bible, listen, which necessarily entails the God of the Bible doesn't exist. Now, I will ask you a simple question that I've
necessarily entails that the God of the Bible doesn't exist, if it's an assumption. We're going to touch on that a little later. But the next part, it said, are agnostics the same as atheists? Darth has made a distinction between them, and he's also said they're the same. I'm going to play this. Darth said that agnostics are really
they try to soft soap their atheism, not strong atheism, but say, well, I'm just an agnostic atheist. No, you're not. You're a full-blown atheist. Not you, but I'm just saying, atheist. Everyone's. If you're not a theist, then you're an atheist. Even agnostics are atheists. They just don't realize it. If we can sit there and say, I reason that God's existence is undetermined.
He said even agnostics are atheists. We're going to play another clip.
There are three basic positions on the existence of God. One can affirm the existence of God, one can deny, and one can remain neutral, such as an agnostic, where you don't know whether or not God does or does not exist. So if it's your position that you neither affirm or deny the existence of God, then the best word that you should use in order not to be confusion in common parlance is to call yourself an agnostic.
All right, so there, we played that clip earlier, but he made a distinction between atheists and agnostics. He said even the best way to describe yourself would be to call yourself an agnostic. That's the best way, according to him. Let's see now, the uniformity of nature, is it assumptive or not assumptive? Darth has said it's both. Let's hear what he says about, he said our most fundamental mental states are not assumptive. I'm sorry, let me.
I don't agree with that statement. My position is that our most fundamental our most fundamental mental states are God ordained, not assumptive.
Okay, so what is
God ordained, not assumptive. Now let's hear this one.
Okay, so what is the most fundamental mental state?
The reality of the external physical world, causality, laws of nature, and that God exists.
Okay.
Now, if you listen to that, or if you listen to different videos, Darth says the laws of nature and the uniformity of nature are the same. It's just another way of saying the same thing. So there he said, that one of the most fundamental mental states is it includes the laws of nature or the uniformity of nature. This is the one where the uniformity of nature and the laws of nature are synonyms for each other.
Establish that there are laws of nature.
I don't know if there are laws of nature, but
you just did. You just said there were.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. You said the uniformity of nature is the same thing as saying laws of nature and physics.
Same thing as the laws of nature and physics. He equates that as being one and the same. Now, according to those videos that I just, Darth said that the laws of nature or uniformity of nature are not assumptive. Now, in the next two clips, we're going to hear a little different story. Let's play the first clip.
I don't know. I don't know if it is or not.
don't think. I think that's a Christian term, uniformity of nature, that you guys use. I don't think that's something they use in the science.
Actually, the uniformity of nature is the fundamental bedrock assumption of all science and empirical endeavors.
Oh, okay. Well, beautiful. Then okay, that's fine. It accepts uniformity of nature. That's fine.
Now.
Okay, so now it's an assumption. Let's go to the next one.
Excuse me. The uniformity of nature is the bedrock assumption of all empiricism. Every scientist who enters into a laboratory and conducts experiments, every single one must assume the uniformity of nature. Otherwise, if they don't, doing observation, testing, and repeating is meaningless.
Okay, so in Darth's impossible to deny worldview, according to him, the uniformity of nature is and is not an assumption. Let's keep going. Excuse me. Let's see. Is there anything self-evident? Darth said that there is and there is not. Let's play the first clip.
There is nothing that is self-evident. Nothing. Okay?
Well, how do we know that we know?
Okay, how do we know that we know?
Because we know.
You don't know that.
No, exactly.
You're not a Christian.
I'm trying to explain to you, okay? Remember we discussed before. Okay, now.
Okay. And you did hear a little there. There was a Discord named Parakeet, which I think is a very good name. He labeled himself with a very appropriate name, Parakeet. Okay, now he said, I'm not going to play these, but there's 5 clips. And in these 5 clips, Darth said there are things that are self. So he first says there's nothing that is self-evident. Then he has 5 different clips saying there is something self-evident. Now, one of the comical things, well, I'm going to let you listen to it. If you remember earlier, he said that there was not anything self-evident. I'm going to play this. This is kind of funny.
There is nothing that is self-evident. Nothing. Okay?
Well, how do we know that we know?
That was the one that you just heard. Where he said nothing is self-evident. Now keep listening.
No, exactly.
You're not a Christian.
I'm trying to explain to you, okay? Remember we discussed before. Okay, now.
I don't think there's anything, tricky.
Sorry, I'm going to go back.
That comes up. A statement or a proposition that is regarded as.
I don't think there's anything, tricky about that or anything.
Yeah, I Googled axiom. This is the first one that comes up. A statement or a proposition that is regarded as being established, accepted, or self-evidently true. Okay.
Okay. So he Googled the word axiom, and when he did that, the first thing that came up, it said a statement or a proposition regarded as being established and accepted or self-evidently true. So that, according to his view, that there is nothing that is self-evident. But when he did a Google search, I guess he came up with a little different answer. Let's see now. What if something is definitional? Oh, this one. Darth uses that word. I'm going to let you listen to the first clip where he uses that word. In this clip, he's talking with, there was a chat or a Snake was right. Okay, that's the name of him. He's an atheist. So I'm going to play that.
I'm still waiting. How do you know that there are universals?
Because the opposite is incoherent.
Yeah, that's just definitional.
So Darth said that it's just, he basically just dismissed what his opponent said. He said, well, that's just definitional. Okay, well, now let's play the next one to see what he says about something definitional.
logic don't hold in all times and all places, then from your worldview, why should I accept any of your logical claims when they are undergirded by when invoking the principle of identity or non-contradiction?
Well, I don't know how you vote than I am, because you haven't demonstrated why you have this knowledge. You just said that you were just saying ifs. So
no, I don't have to demonstrate it because it's true by definition.
The laws of logic are true by definition.
No, the laws of logic would be true by the Christian God exists, then they are true by definition.
Well, how do you verify that? Well, wait a minute.
Oh, that's kind of convenient. True by definition. He doesn't even have to justify. Convenient. Okay. Let's see. A priori statements. Are they true by definition, or are they a smokescreen and a fantasy? Darth has said they are both. Let's play the first one.
Okay, so if we say if X exists and we define X, then by definition certain things follow by definition. Now you may conclude that they wouldn't have been proven to your satisfaction, but it's an a priori claim, in other words, by definition, such as a bachelor is an unmarried male. Okay, so that is true by definition, not based upon induction or observation. It's true by definition. So the Christian God is defined, right? And that those definitions are found within the Bible. Are you following me so far?
Beautiful. Okay, so the a priori claims are true by definition. Let's play this.
I know you're well intentioned, and I'm not trying to abuse you, but you're not going to bamboozle me by using certain philosophy nomenclature such as axioms or a priori statements. It doesn't cut the mustard with me. You can have a priori on the bottom line.
A priori statements are philosophy. Let's see. Harry said a priori statements are like saying, I imagine the world this way. Like imaginary.
A priori and axiomatic are just philosophy nomenclature for I imagine the world is this way.
Imagine the world. So I guess in some debates, he said a priori statements are true by definition. And in other chats, he said they're basically imaginary. So I guess it just depends on the situation he's in as to how he wants to respond, which is just beautiful. Okay, now we're going to keep on going. God. Is God in reality or not within reality? Darth says both. See, God is in reality. Let's play that one.
That's what I just said. They can't.
Yeah,
but,
the same way.
However, if we have an ultimate in reality, which is God, he's ultimate, he's eternal, he's unconditionally.
An ultimate in reality, which is God. Let's hear that. This is the one that really, it kind of shocked me. I couldn't believe my ears.
There is
somebody's cutting you off, Doc. Can you repeat what you said?
There is, in the Christian worldview, for the idea that God is somehow within reality, this is completely fallacious.
So God is in reality and not within reality. Beautiful, impossible to deny worldview so far. Let's see, common ground with an unbeliever. Darth says he does have it and he does not have it. Let's play the first one. He says he cannot have common ground with an unbeliever.
We have two different worldviews because there's not a common ground. This is a myth that the skeptics have, that there can be or should be common ground. It's a myth of neutrality. Now Floyd keeps on making.
Okay, common ground is a myth. Okay, now let's hear the next one.
that your worldview why you can't do the same either. So say I believe in worldview X and you believe in worldview Y. How do we have any meaningful dialogue on anything?
Because we don't have neutral ground, but we have common ground because we're both made in the image of the triune God of the Christian Scripture. Well,
high pitch, but he said, Darth said that one can have common ground with an unbeliever. All right, let's see, properly basic beliefs. Do we have them or not? Darth said that we all have them and that they are without. Okay, let's play the first one. Darth said that we all have starting propositions or properly basic beliefs.
In God?
Otherwise,
what are you talking about?
We all have starting presuppositions or properly basic beliefs. Okay.
Right. So if I start with a presupposition of knowledge, why do I need God?
Okay, so we all have starting propositions or properly basic beliefs. Let's hear where Darth says we don't. Or they're without foundation.
Truth-valued statements, but Floyd has admitted that he cannot justify his beliefs. But the moment he verbalizes that he has beliefs, he's making a truth-valued statement for which, so whatever comes out of Floyd's mouth, nothing that comes out of Floyd's mouth can be justified. So why should we accept? Let me just finish. Give me 10 more seconds. Floyd is admitting that he cannot everything that he comes out of his mouth is founded upon the foundation of a properly basic belief, which he cannot demonstrate as a case. Therefore, nothing he says can be demonstrated to be the case.
Just have a question for you. You said that
let me correct myself. I did not mean to say that Darth said that you did not have properly basic beliefs. I meant to say Darth said that properly basic beliefs have no foundation. That's what I meant. Okay, so let me correct myself. Okay, now absolute truth. Does Darth use this term? Darth has used the term, and he says he does not. See, let's hear the first one. This is the one where he says he does not.
Yes, that's a point here. There's a point here. So you state to him that he doesn't have absolute truth, which I agree with. He appeals to reason. I
don't use terms like absolute truth. Okay.
What term do you use?
I think we've got about 15 minutes left. We'll hit the, let's see, the next one. This is where Darth has used the term absolute truth.
So the alternative that you just provided, which was, well, then you must believe in these things on faith, implies that I believe necessarily these things, right? So the only thing that I have, that you have, that Thomas has, as best any of us can know, is the way that we can measure and interact with the world around us.
Is that absolute, Jamie?
If you say absolute and mean not dependent on something else, then
it's absolutely true.
Can you define what you mean by absolutely true? It is the only. I have.
All right. So there he said absolutely true. Let's play the next one where he said he used that term again.
No conclusion in science can actually be considered truth. It can only be a tentative conclusion. So, since all conclusions in science are tentative and are not declared to be absolute truth, by what means can you, as a skeptic, determine that anything is true?
Okay, so there we heard him say the term absolute truth, which he says he doesn't use. Let's see, what is Darth's starting point? So, remember now, a starting point would be, I guess, a fixed point. It would be 1 point. In other words, you're not going to say I have a starting point and point to 1 point and then turn around and point to a different point and try to say both of them are your starting point. Now, Darth says in these following clips, these are his he says he has a starting point. I'm not going to play all of them because there's 9 of them. So Darth has 9 different starting points. This is on my website too, which I'm looking at right now. It shows 9 different starting points. That's his starting point. Let's see. Darth has said that he assumes the reliability of his senses, and also said that he does not. Let's play the first one. Darth has said that he assumes the reliability of his senses.
Look like it be that in that particular circumstance, it was reliable.
Now, he used your sensory experience to find that out.
Right. So when one appeals to sensory experience, you must assume the basic reliability.
I mean, if you want to go that route, fine. But all I need for my worldview is to presuppose or work out what.
But do you understand?
This is the reality.
This is not a controversial point that I'm making. It's well recognized in philosophy that we, one, from a philosophical point of view, one must assume the basic reliability of your sense perception.
Okay, beautiful. So he said that that is not a controversial position or controversial statement among philosophers. Not controversial to assume the reliability of your senses. Let's see now. The next one. Let's see what he has to say here.
You're assuming the reliability of your senses, aren't you?
I don't agree with that statement. My position is that our most fundamental mental states are God ordained, not assumptive.
Not assumptive. Not assumptive. Okay, Darth's theory of knowledge. Now, this is going to get to the foundation of his knowledge. It's going to really get to the core of his, I guess you could say the foundation. These are things that you just don't switch, like it's not like going to to try to change a pack of chocolate M&Ms for a pack of peanut M&Ms. It doesn't work that way. These are foundational beliefs. Darth frequently criticizes atheists, agnostics, and unbelievers because they do not give him the answer to what he refers to as the most profound question in all of humanity. The existence of Darth has said that his position on this question is one of knowledge or justification, as seen in the following clip. So I'm going to
justification is going to have to be within your theory of knowledge and your ontology. The justification in the Christian worldview is in virtue of either God's natural or special revelation.
So the justification in his worldview is either natural or special revelation. And when he was asked what is special revelation, he said that's the Bible. That.
In a special way, which you did not define.
I said special revelation in the Bible.
Special revelation. Can you define what special revelation is?
Yeah, I just did, the Bible.
Okay.
Special revelation is the Bible. Okay. Now, Darth has said that God has made us, this is including unbelievers, he has made us to think in certain ways that we cannot think otherwise. See, play that.
He is given he is through his revelation, his revelatory acts, he has made us to think in certain foundational ways about the world around us that we cannot think otherwise. From a Christian point of view, God's creative act of making us in his image is a justification for that knowledge state. Now,
all right, so we cannot think otherwise. In order to better understand Darth's knowledge base, we're now going to really focus. We're going to take a look at certain terms that he uses. And when we look at those terms, it's going to reveal inconsistencies in his. Also, we want to point out that the meaning, quote, the meaning of words is based on between two or more parties, whoever can at least have a minimal consensus over the meaning of a word, unquote. Now, guess who I got that from? Let me play that.
It's not necessarily correct.
Well, that's not what we're saying. Words can and do change. The meaning of words is based upon between two or more parties who have at least a minimal consensus over the meaning of a word. Okay?
So if you have two or three people together in a group, if you have a minimal consensus, if you those three people are basically in agreement with each other, that would be what would constitute a minimal consensus. Let's see now. Now, speaking about consensuses, let's see what Darth said about that. He has gone on record as actually appealing to a consensus about a particular scientific point. Let's see what he says.
I've given the reason why I think that.
No, I didn't ask you what you might surmise might be the case. I said, what is the prevailing provisional consensus about the nature of the independent cosmological constants? So you either accept, reject, or you don't know of that consensus. So is there a consensus on the state of narrow parameters of the cosmological constants, Joe?
Contend that they're psychophysical laws.
Okay, Joe, I'll ask the question again. Is there a current consensus?
I said yes,
okay,
and then I said that the fine. Oh, okay, hold on. You want to at the fine? Oh, okay, hold on. You want to repeat it again, and I'll say yes again.
This is amazing. Is there currently a consensus about a provisional conclusion? Because all conclusions in science are provisional. As to the value of electromagnetism, do you agree that the two cosmological constants that were invoked are recognized as a consensus in science to each have values that are of an astronomically narrow parameter?
Well, but you're not even willing.
I didn't ask you about human life. I asked you, is there a current consensus among physicists as to the provisional conclusions that we have about the values of those two cosmological constants and their respective values of those two that I cited exist within an astronomically narrow parameter? Do you agree with that or not?
Well, that's too far.
Are you aware that there is a consensus about the nature and parameters of the cosmological constants or not?
David, don't worry about it, but just know that.
So in that clip, that was actually a single conversation, but I edited some of it out because it was a long clip. He seems to put a lot of emphasis, or he seems to put a lot of credibility into a consensus. So now let's hear the other and that. Hear that.
I'm having problems getting through to you. I'll go over it again. You told me earlier that proof and verification is not what conforms and coheres to an ultimate authority or standard. Remember you told me that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, but then I said to you just a minute ago, is proving something that which conforms and coheres to your most foundational beliefs?
I don't view it that way. I don't think
Sir, then tell me this. If proving and verification something to you is not me presenting a stipulation that conforms and coheres to your foundational beliefs, then what would my stipulation have to conform to if it is not your most foundational beliefs?
A consensus of agreement.
Dude, you really shouldn't be in this conversation.
Okay, but can I respond now? Can I respond?
Did you understand the blunder that you just made?
No, if you would let me respond.
You didn't understand the blunder you just made, dude.
Sir, can I respond?
Wait a minute. Okay,
look, you've been talking for 20 minutes. Why don't you stop? Why don't you take a break?
How did you determine that a consensus is correct, sir?
How did I determine that a consensus is correct?
Yeah. How did you verify that the consensus is correct? Did it conform and cohere to your most foundational beliefs?
What did you need to give him a chance to explain?
I understand, Holly. It's just that he keeps on scurrying down these.
I'm not trying to skirt anything, but you don't go
down the rabbit hole. So the question is, Wingflyer, is when there is a consensus proclamation, is it proven because it coheres with your foundational beliefs or not?
Okay, so I guess on that one he had a little problem. The consensus. Okay, now let's see. Darth has said that he goes by the standard when he uses certain words or definitions. Let's see what he's.
I'm very comfortable with not having 100% certainty on that.
Okay, I didn't mention psychological confidence, sir. I mentioned knowledge, justified, true belief. Okay, I'm using the pretty standard definition of justified, true belief, not psychological confidence in a belief that may or may not be true. Okay, so why are you asserting something that you don't know under the standard definition of knowledge?
What is the assertion that you claim that I'm making outside of knowledge?
You said nobody knows. Nobody can ultimately justify our model's reality. How do you know that?
I said every model of reality is unjustified.
That's right.
All right, so he talked about he goes by the standard pretty much, when he uses words or definitions. Now, let's see what might happen if you are speaking with Darth and you want to go ahead and go by the philosophical standard.
It's standard in
now, what I want to know is, I don't care what standard in philosophy. I'm not talking with philosophers right now. I'm talking with you. Now, what I want to know from
examining our impossible to deny worldview. Let's see. Uniformity of nature and the laws of nature are synonyms for each other. I played that clip before, so I'm going to skip over that. Laws of nature or the uniformity of nature are not self-evident. That?
Does the world operate in terms of laws? Well, yeah, it's because. How do you know that? How do you know that? Well, I don't know if I can't. They justify it themselves. It's observed and it's listen. That's begging the question. I understand. If you say it's observed, that's a fallacy because observation presupposes laws of nature. So you're presupposing laws of nature, then invoking eyesight, and then saying therefore laws of nature. Well, that's a fallacy. No, well, what I'm saying is that it's self. Do you understand that? Do you understand that's a fallacy? The laws of nature are not, listen to me, the laws of nature are not self-evident. If I told you all swans.
All right, we're on the home stretch now. Well, I'm going to skip this one. It just said the uniformity of nature is the same as physics, which I think we touched on that. Also, the uniformity of nature is roughly the same as the laws of chemistry and physics. Okay, then he said physics is another way to say that.
The guy says, he said, we don't know. For all we know, physics could operate different elsewhere. Okay? Now, when we talk about physics, that's just a fancy way of talking about continuity. Now.
And what is continuity? How does he define that? Let's hear the.
If you have no ultimate continuity, then you have no actual continuity.
Well, define continuity. What do you mean by continuity?
Continuity means that something or some things stay the same?
Nothing.
Well, then now you're screwed.
Okay, so some things stay the same. Excuse me. He said, without continuity or uniformity, one can't make sense of anything. With that.
Including the unity and diversity in existence. If you say that God is not needed, then the question is there actual continuity in existence amongst all of the diversity of particulars? Because without any continuity, right, without regularity and uniformity, you're not going to be able to make sense of things. So,
okay, presuppositions, axioms, and properly basic beliefs are all unjustified assumptions.
That it works. Okay. When you give me your long-fangled explanation, your axiomatic system, blah blah blah, the bottom line is simply this: is your standards for reasoning are your unjustified assumptions. Doesn't matter whether you call them axioms or not. Doesn't matter whether you call them properly basic beliefs. Doesn't matter whether you call them presuppositions. Your standards for reason and thought are unjustified assumptions. Now,
just as a quick reminder, he spoke of axioms as being unjustified assumptions. Remember earlier when he did this Google search of that word, and it said it was something that is self-evidently true, or that is self-evident. That's kind of funny. Let's see now. Also, Darth has said that assumptions are not knowledge. Another clip, he said they are like make-believe, which we played before. Assumptions are an appeal to arbitrariness. So yeah, he said this a lot. Play this.
Your position, you consider to be a circular one.
Any appeal to ultimate authority is circular.
Yeah, I agree with you. Is that not a problem for you?
No.
Why not?
Why?
Yes.
What other means is there other than appealing to an ultimate authority for justification?
That's down. Assumptions.
Okay, yeah. What that is that's an appeal to arbitrariness.
Sure. I mean, both are conceptually equivalent, I would say, in terms of that's incorrect because Donald Trump is president.
Well, that's not even correct right now, but let's see. Arbitrary statements are vacuous. Let's see. This is going to come to a head pretty soon. We're almost at the end.
Reverberated on your speakers. Now, you right now, you're not getting the implications. When you concede that your statements are arbitrary, then they're vacuous. Because then I can just sit there and say to you, you're wrong because the moon is made out of green cheese. You're just making arbitrary statements.
Okay, now let's see. Well, we already went over this. It said knowledge equals a justified true belief. We're going to review the things that we just went over. According to Darth's own description of his own usage of words, the following can be concluded. The uniformity of nature is basically the same thing as saying the laws of nature, physics, continuity, and roughly the same as the laws of chemistry. Presuppositions, axioms, and properly basic beliefs are unjustified assumptions. Assumptions are not knowledge. Assumptions are an appeal to arbitrariness. Arbitrary statements are vacuous, and knowledge is a justified true belief. Section 3. Also, Darth places some of his knowledge into a category that he refers to as ultimate or foundational knowledge, which includes what he sometimes refers to as innate knowledge, God-ordained knowledge, providentially endowed, or our most fundamental mental states. Darth sometimes says that we accept this category of knowledge because God has constructed our mental facilities in a way, including unbelievers, that we could not think otherwise. So this category of knowledge is described in the following clips. Well, this is where I'm going to just go over this. He talked about foundational beliefs, which he included the reality of the external physical world, causality, and the laws of nature, uniformity of nature, physics, continuity. Okay, he also said basic cognition is via biological reproduction. So basic cognition, according to Darth, it's passed down via biological reproduction. The uniformity of nature is accepted because we can't think otherwise. We played that earlier. The uniformity of nature is believed by everyone for that.
Now, the Bible has revealed that he instituted laws of nature. And in fact, he made you and I to think in terms of laws of nature at a rudimentary level that we can't think otherwise. You show me a person who lives and gets up every morning and does things, and I'll show you somebody who believes in the uniformity of nature.
Okay, so somebody could be either a believer or a non-believer. Now, Darth explains things that we can't be wrong about. He was asked, what are some of the things we can't be wrong about? Let's hear that.
Now, on contrary to that, in contradistinction in the Christian worldview, all of our basic mental states are providentially ordained of God. So there are certain things that we know that are ordained of God that we can't be wrong about. Okay, so some of these basic mental states, by definition, are not assumptions. They are
not assumptions.
They are known. Listen, they are known not in virtue of assumption. They are known in virtue that they are providentially ordained and instilled into the basic cognition of man.
Okay, so what faculties do you think we cannot be wrong about, ever?
We cannot be wrong about that there is one true God and a creator and sustainer of all things. We cannot be wrong that he has created an externally, physically real world that is not illusory. We cannot be wrong that he has ordained that there is causality in this material realm. We cannot be wrong that he has created a world that operates in an orderly and regular way. We cannot be wrong that he has communicated with various individuals in human history, starting with Adam and reaching its ultimate culmination in the person and work of Jesus Christ. We cannot be wrong. We cannot be wrong that God has spoken through us through his Son, especially through Jesus Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. Okay? We cannot be wrong about that.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, those are things that we cannot be wrong about. Now, let me keep going. We're almost finished. See, so according to the above videos, Darth says that the world operates in an orderly way, continuity or nature, and that this falls under the category which he describes as being part of our basic cognitive thinking. This would be something that Darth has described as being God ordained or providentially ordained, well, depending on which conversation you're listening to, I should say. And it's passed on via biological reproduction and is something that we can't be wrong about. Now, let's keep going. Now, listen to this. In the following clip, Darth was asked if physics or continuity or uniformity of nature, he was asked, is that the same everywhere in the universe? That's what Darth said. Guess what he said. Let's take a listen.
I told you what he said.
I'm not gonna go by what you say. I'm gonna ask the man himself. He's here.
Okay, good, man. You just confirmed that is correct. This is how poorly Ask an Atheist Sydney reasons.
Now, why do you say that? Well, let's hear your argument.
There you go, Sydney.
Because you believe induction can give you answers of certainty.
I said that physics is the same everywhere in the universe. Why is that not correct?
I didn't say that was not correct. I said you can't substantiate that.
So it is correct.
No.
And if it is correct, why should I substantiate it? Yeah, if you're not saying
okay, you see what I'm dealing with here, Dex? I'm dealing here with adults who have the mind of teenagers.
Well, do you think that's a correct or incorrect statement?
Okay, it is an unsubstantiated claim that Sydney has made that physics is the same everywhere.
What do you think?
Well, what I think is that the Christian God exists, and He has revealed Himself, and He has revealed that He has made it. Okay, well, I don't know that physics is the same everywhere in the universe. But
Interesting. He said he doesn't know. Let's take a little closer look at that. Now, if Darth had innate revelation, because he says there's 3 different types of revelation, if he had innate revelation about that question, he could have answered the question, because according to Darth's own stipulation, innate revelation is knowledge that we've been born with. It's passed down through biological reproduction.
God has revealed Himself.
And how has the Christian God revealed Himself?
He has revealed Himself in 3 forms: natural revelation, innate revelation, and special revelation.
And can you expand upon those 3 forms?
Yes. Natural revelation, as it is described in Romans 1, that all men know that God exists when they just merely look upon the creation. They can discern His eternal powers from what they see. In addition, God has also given innate revelation that they know God exists in their mind through the Holy Spirit, as it has been revealed in special revelation. Now, if you reject that it has been revealed, then you're going to have to tell me from your worldview, how are you able to determine that anything is the truth?
Okay, so I'm sorry, hang on just a moment, please. By mistake, I got on the wrong page. Let's see. Close this. Okay, I closed that now. So that was, if, like I said, if he had innate revelation, he should have been able to answer the question. Now, if it was natural revelation, Darth still should have been able to answer the question. Let's.
Yeah, I up the Bible and read God's revelation.
So you do trust your eyes then?
When I look out at the sun, the moon, and the stars, the heavens declare the glory word. It's
Okay,
just
cool.
self-evident.
Well, I see logic, and I see the.
Okay, so what I did there, actually, let me go back a little. So in the previous clip, he was talking about, Darth said that that innate revelation is something that we have knowledge of, or that we've been born with. And he talked about looking upon, in this second clip, he talked about looking upon the heavens and the looking upon creation. Now, what's interesting to note about that, Darth talked about looking upon creation. He would know about God. But what he said is, he said God's work is self-evident. Remember what he said earlier about something that's self-evident? He said nothing is self-evident. Let's play that.
Yeah, I up the Bible and read God's revelation.
So you do trust your eyes then?
When I look out at the sun, the moon, and the stars, the heavens declare the glory word. It's just
cool.
self-evident.
Well, I see logic, and I see the.
Sorry, I played that twice, but there's a little problem there. But now let me keep going. Darth's previous statement contradicts another statement he made about nothing being self-evident. Okay, that's the one I was speaking. Here's the one where we listened to earlier, where he said nothing is self-evident. Now, what about the last category, special revelation? That's the Bible. If it was special revelation, and Darth says that special revelation is the Bible, then we're just going to note that Darth said he has been a Christian since his late teens. And Darth is now in his late 50s, old enough to be some people's father. Sound familiar? So in the original video where Darth was asked the question, he failed to answer the question. That video was originally posted to YouTube by Sidney Winston in February of 2016. So Darth had already been a Christian for 36 years, yet he was unable to answer the question. So that's kind of interesting. Now, furthermore, Darth has said that if one does not claim continuity, then one has no basis for intelligence. Let's hear that.
Either continuity exists, you will identify directly or indirectly that it exists, or you don't. Now, if you do not claim that there's continuity, then you have no basis for intelligibility, because your very capacity to speak is going to require the precondition of continuity.
No basis for intelligibility. That's poetic. Again. Also, now here's the real one. Here's the stinger. Also, Darth has gone on record as saying that he assumes basic cognition from within his worldview, but in the following video, or well, first this is the one where he said that. I think we heard this earlier.
Act like an adult in these rooms, but okay, well, you see, I'm assuming that from within my worldview, that the God of the Bible has endowed you with certain basic cognitive and reasoning faculties. But you see, you don't. Okay, I'd like to state with foolishness is when one's position has been rendered absurd.
Here's the one I was talking about. Listen to this.
But the issue is simply this. You are stipulating from your model of reality that our most foundational beliefs are assumptions, which means that they are not providentially ordained by God. Now, if it is the case that my most foundational commitment that the Christian God has revealed himself in natural and special revelation, and if that ultimate commitment and foundational belief that I have is in fact arbitrary, as you say, that necessarily follows that the Christian God does not exist.
Necessarily follows that the Christian God does not exist. So basically what he just did there, he falsified his own God, according to his own stipulations. Let's keep going. This is the last section, section 4. More about properly basic beliefs. Darth has gone on record as saying all of us have starting propositions or properly basic beliefs. I think I played that earlier. Now, when Darth debated Floyd, Darth criticized Floyd for his properly basic beliefs, saying that anything Floyd said was without foundation. That's also a repeat video. Now, Darth has said that people who hide behind terms like properly basic beliefs is tantamount to the rejection of God and his self-disclosure of himself. I'll play that one.
just be complete subjectivism, right?
And it's all abstract thinking, right?
Yeah. So see, people can hide behind terms like axioms and properly basic beliefs, right? But ultimately, this is with the rejection of God and his self-disclosure of himself, who he is, and his attributes, and his plan of creation, making facts are what they are in the plan of God.
Remember earlier, Darth said we all have properly basic. Now, what else did Darth say about the rejection of God's self-disclosure? Darth has said that, quote, to deny the self-disclosure of God is to be insane or to embrace honor. Interesting. Let's hear this.
An insult to you or anyone else. To deny the self-disclosure of God is to be insane. Well, what do I mean by that? It is to be insane is to embrace contradictions, right? What do schizophrenics do? Schizophrenics constantly are offering propositions that are ultimately contradictory, and then when you point out the contradictions, it's water off a duck's back. When the atheist says, "Well, I don't."
Of Darth's impossible to deny fundamentalist Christian worldview. So we suggest to the reader to think about what you have just seen and take Darth's own statements into consideration about what it would take to falsify his worldview or show contradictions. Also remember that Darth said, quote, a worldview is either entirely true or it is not entirely true. So it's up to you to decide if you think that what you have just read and listened to can amount to being entirely true or not entirely true. So that's it. And then I have a form there, on my website. It said, what do you think about Darth's impossible to deny worldview? You could fill that out if you'd like to do that. That's basically about it. Now, one thing I'd like to point out